Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto-transposable music system through the perspective of all 12 collections of 7 notes, also automatically allowing you to rotate to every modal position of all 12 collections of 7 notes, rotating the tonic as we do so. Part number 2. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', for which Microsoft Excel is required. Or in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we basically built this from a blank worksheet, but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there, or just construct the part of the worksheet that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab we will refer to, an example tab, in essence the answer key, the practice tab having pre-formatted cells, so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that is okay, because we'll be continuing to work in the blank tab where we started with a blank worksheet, working from scratch, continuing in essence in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills but our Excel formatting skills as well, for formatting's sake. Let's go on over to the example tab to get a reminder of what we're doing. We're building our worksheet to be able to write down our musical ideas in a way that is as efficiently as possible. Also thinking about the optimal way that I envision and predict that the DAW system and the MIDI systems will be working in the future, allowing us not only to write things down in a more efficient and streamlined way, a little bit less overwhelming format, giving us some multiple options to do so, but also allowing us to transpose whatever we write down to all 12 collections of 7 notes, or at least from the perspective of those collections of notes, and rotate them through each of the modal perspectives, shifting the tonic as we go through that rotation, which would be optimal particularly for those users of a DAW or MIDI system working by ear, because then they can easily shift things around and listen to it, which would be nice. So to do that, we mapped out the MIDI numbering system just in terms of the MIDI numbers, and then we also mapped out what I think is the optimal way for us to think about it from a human perspective. And then we're going to now continue on to map out the relative positions, these being the modal positions like the Nashville number system. And then we'll think about various ways that we can name chords. And the naming of the chords becomes important because we would like to be able to, no matter how we enter the chord into like a DAW system or something like that, be able to rewrite the chord without the note name, so that we can look at relative position, allowing us to then rotate the chord if we want to. To do that, we're going to have to map out the chord information over here, and these are the nodal points in the chords. We'll talk more about this later. And then we can basically come to our collections of notes. These are the 12 collections of notes from a relative position standpoint. And then this would be the interface of like our DAW, which is also what I would recommend for like how you might want to write down your sheet music, even outside of DAW. If you're just kind of putting together a song, you might want to write down your chords in such a way that they're referencing the modal point, similar to the Nashville number system, and then use Nashville numbers in order to write your song. Why? Because then you can play your song in any of the 12 collections of notes, right? Or you can imagine writing it down this way in a particular collection of notes traditionally, and then the underlying system in the DAW should be able to transpose that to a relative position perspective, allowing you to then transpose it. And then we can transpose it to a DAW type of system, which is just going to be a much more longer type of system, a bit overwhelming, because the DAW, unlike the way you might write something if you had the most streamlined way of writing it, would be nice to have like chords available to be added, as well as then in one octave possibly have a numbering system that allows you to write down everything within an octave on one line, which streamlines things. So you could have the option of having multiple lines, but you can also write everything on one line, and then you can see the numbering system gives you the information, or you could do it by the letters down here. But either way, we should be able to transpose it. All right, that's the idea. Let's go back to the blank tab, and so we're going to be continuing on. And now we wrote down last time our local distance, our absolute distance, and then our letters. Now I want to be adding the idea of our Nashville number system, which gives us our relative position. And the relative position is the thing that allows us to be able to do the rotation, should be automatic within our system. Now, the idea here, of course, being that when you start writing things down and you're musically writing things down, whether it be electronically or not electronically, it's more efficient to do it by relative position. Nashville numbers, which could include 12 numbers, we're just going to say that the ones in the middle are like the ones that outside the key in the ocean, 0.5 numbers, right? Why? Because again, that allows you to easily rotate your song around and play with it in more flavors, more different collections of notes, right? So let's take this. I'm going to go Home tab. I'm going to make this format paint and make this a skinny. And so we're going to say this is going to be 1, 2, 3. This is going to be the Nashville numbers. I will copy this down, this pattern to 7. So we have 7 collections of notes. We're always playing in 7 collections of notes in Western music. Now you might argue with that and say, well, sometimes I play in a pentatonic thing and sometimes I use notes that are outside the 7-note collection. That's fine, but the pentatonic in Western music can be thought of as a subset of the 7-note collection, and just because you're in a 7-note collection doesn't mean that you can't play the notes that aren't in that 7-note collection. It's just that we're not seeing them as part of the 7-note collection, right? So that's how most people in Western music are going to view things. And if we view things that way, then that's going to allow us to assign a relative position, allowing us to shift our perspective through all the collections of notes. So if I say I'm going to give it the abbreviated names. So I would call this an Ionian. The 1 is the Ionian. The 2 is the Dorian. The 3 is the Phrygian. The 4 is the Lydian. I'm not going to make an L but a Y for the Lydian. The 5 is the Mixolydian. I'm not using an M because that looks like major or minor. I'm going to use an X, and A is Aeolian, and N is Locrian. Okay, now if we had our formula, how do we generate the notes, the 7-note collection? We use our formula typically based off of the major scale, which is whole step, or 2 notes, whole step, 2 notes, 1 note, half step, 2 notes, whole step, 2 notes, whole step, 2 notes, whole step, 1 note, half step. That's the pattern that allows us to generate our information. Now, from a numbering standpoint, where do we want to start then in order to pull the pattern? I'm going to start on 4, which is C, meaning in my numbering system for human beings, I would like to say it goes from A, which would be A3 under the normal octave convention, but I would like to say it's A0 octave in the middle of the piano, just below or to the left of the C, up through G sharp, is going to be numbered 1 through 12. That's super practical to do, to have numbers, because even from a human's perspective, this isn't like a human versus machine thing. We want to have the numbers because then we can do simple math. So I'm going to say 4 is a C then. So 4 is C if I start on A. So then I'm going to say, then I just apply this formula. So this 2 is actually in between the 4, right? So 4 plus 2 gets us to the next note, which will be a 6. So in other words, it's going to be this 4 plus this 2. Not that 2, that 2, right? And then I can copy that down. So it gives me my formula. I copy that down. So, whoa, wait a second. Que paso. Oh, because this is, now this went over, there's only, let me make this larger. Now this went over 12. Now there's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet, right? Only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. So I have to come up with a system where it's going to go up to 12 and then rotate back around. We can use an if-then logical function to do that. So this one is, so let me do this. First, let me apply the letter. So how can I get the letter? That 4 is a C, right? So I can say this is X lookup. Look up that number 4, comma, what array do you want to look that up in? I want you to look at it in the local array down here, which is in the blue. We can pick up this one. I want you to find it right in there, and then return to us this letter. Give me the letter. Find it there and give me the letter. That should find the 4 and give me the C. Find the 4, give me the C. Now we could have done it here. That might be easier because it would be up top if I have this in here. Let's do it there. Let's do it again. Equals X lookup, because this will be up top. It'll be easier to work with. This down to that 12, the local distance, comma. Wait a second. Find that 4, comma, and this range, comma, and then return to me this range. Find that 4 in there, and then give me the related C. Boom, done. Double clicking. I'm gonna make absolute reference this F4 on the keyboard, F4 on the keyboard, F4 on the keyboard, F4 on the keyboard, so that these ranges do not move as I copy it down. And then I'm gonna copy it down, and it works except down here. Why? Because 13 is not in the local range. It only goes up to 12. So I'm gonna make this one yellow. Gonna make it yellow because that indicates that's my key. That's the thing that's gonna shift my entire worksheet, noting that when I build this in Excel, I'm gonna have one kind of pivot point that will change everything. But if you're a computer programmer, and I hope someone picks this up somewhere and puts it into a database system, then of course you want to be able to map each perspective out so I can do the data input from either perspective, and it should be able to generate the other perspective. So I'm just mapping out. If you're looking at it from a DAW system or for a computer system, this will map out from one perspective, right? And then you should be able to adjust it. And like I said, I hope someone will do it at some point. I guarantee it, because it's obvious that this is the way I feel like it, unless I'm crazy. This is someone's going to do that. So then we're going to say if tab this plus this is if that plus that is less than 13, so it has to be up through 12, not including 13, then what I want you to do, then I want you to do that, then do it, then do that plus that. But, comma, if that plus that is greater than 13, what do you want you to do? Do the same thing, but then subtract 12. So that means when it gets to 13 over here, it's going to take 13 minus 12, and this will take 15 minus 12. So let's go, okay, that enter, and then I can copy that down and see if it works. Does it work? Oh yeah, it works. This is better than video games. I don't even play video games anymore. I play Excel. It's the best video game ever. Okay, I'm gonna make this blue, and then we'll take this whole thing and then drop it down and make this. Minecraft's got nothing on music theory in Excel. That's what I feel like. But whatever. People just don't understand, man. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to copy this down too. It's going to repeat. The reason I want to repeat it, I'm going to make this bordered and green, and then we'll repeat this one down till it goes back here again. Delete this, and this will be blue. So we'll say borders and blue. Now I'm repeating it a couple times because that might make it a little bit more simplified when I make my formula. So if I make a formula that refers to this, for example, and I start down here on the Aeolian or on the 6, then I would have to wrap it around just like we did to get back to the 1. So the other way I could have done that, notice that I could have, the other way that I could do that is to repeat it and say, well, just keep on going down to the next one underneath it, right? So that might be useful in some formulas. So I'm going to repeat it out, and you can imagine it going around like in a circle. Okay, so now let's make another skinny. I'm going to make a skinny. Grab that skinny, format, paint it, skinny Q. All right, we call them skinny Q. Okay, so now we're going to say that we have the chord names. Now I'm gonna list out the multiple ways that we can list the chord names. So, and this is, so for example, if I'm looking at a major chord, what are the names for a major chord? It would be something major, like a C major, because I'm in the key of C right now. So I'm thinking about an Ionian, a chord built off the Ionian would be a C major, and then something major 7, and then something C major 9, and then C major 11, and then C major 13, right? That would be the general idea. But I'd actually rather write it, and I want to be able to transpose it. I want to allow people to write it this way, but I want to also write it without the C. Now, I didn't add the C because I want to add the C with a reference so that it will change as I change that number 4. How could I do that? Well, I could go, okay, let me get my cheat sheet. I can go, okay, this is going to be equal to this C right there, and tying it together, now I have a text field. The text has to be in quotes. So the quotes text in quotes. So now you have the C major, and if I change this to a D, change that to a 6, it's a D major. So that everything is pivoting around that yellow node. And then I could do the same thing here, right? I could say this is going to be then equal to that C and quotes the, oh, come on, Excel, you knew what I'm doing. I wasn't done. I wasn't done, Excel. Why does it do that? Okay, you don't have to yell at it. It should know. It should know I wasn't done yet. Okay. Oh, I didn't have the and on that one. Put the and on this one. And then this one is going to be, this is going to be equal to the C, and then and brackets, and then this is going to equal the C, and then and brackets and brackets. Okay. So then I'd like to remove the C altogether. So the different ways that I could write this is I could say it's one way I'm going to write it is say it's a 3-note Ionian chord. So I'm going to name it by the Ionian, but I know that the Ionian is the collection of notes around the key of C, because I know the collection of notes. That's what allows it to be transposable. So this is going to mean to me a 3-note Ionian chord. Okay, so that's fine. So by the way, I could write it the other way, because I think I'm going to write it like the other, like I'm going to pull this over here. Let's pull this over here. And I'm going to put in front of this, because I want to reference it not with a number first, because if people were doing data input just with the chords on a keyboard, you might put the N first to say that now that's going to be the number of notes is what I'm going to say that stands for, and it's going to be 3, and then it's going to be an Ionian chord. Now I want the Ionian chord to be pulled in from actually the Ionian, I could just type it in there. I mean, I could pull it in from this Ionian, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be the same either way. So this is going to be then an N4 Ionian, and then we have an N5 Ionian, and then an N6 Ionian, and then an N7 Ionian, and then an N8 Ionian. So that means that these are all the chords that we can build. Not an 8. It goes up to 7. These are all the chords that we can build off of the Ionian that don't include notes that are outside of the 7-note collection. You could still build chords outside the 7-note collection in our system, but then you might use something other than a normal standard naming convention. So my thought is then that we can enter it this way if we wanted to write something in the key of C, but you might write it this way instead, or transpose it, or be able to alter between the two with your system, because this way allows you to then rotate through all 12 collections of notes, and possibly rotate from the Ionian chord to the perspective of the Dorian, making the tonic the Dorian. So then I can make a chord that's just a 3-note Dorian chord. And so that will not shift everything uniformly up, but it'll kind of force everything to be in the Dorian. So we'll talk more about that later, but that's the idea. And so we could also call it then just an Ionian 2 chord, because that means it's going to be starting on the Ionian node, and then we go 2 modal whole steps up. So if you name the starting point as an Ionian node as opposed to the note name, then you can just name the starting point and the distance from that starting point from a relative position from the Ionian node. And again, that's a useful way to name your chords, because that allows you to name it in such a way that everything you write is automatically transposable. So I could just say I'm playing in the collection of notes around the C major, list what the tonic is, and then write my chords based on the modal points, allowing me to then just transpose my collection of notes to anything I want, right? So I can play with, so I can move things around. And I really think that all songs will eventually be transposed in this way once we get AI in our minds, because now we have the ability to easily translate between a more logical system and a less logical system, right? So I should be able to say, give me this particular song, but now give it to me just in relative position, chords wise and note wise, allowing me to then transpose it on sheet music easily, right? Because then I could just transpose it to any collection of notes. Now, if the Ionian was the tonic, I might make it a capital I2, right? An I3. And that allows me to just be able to say, look, I'm in the collection of notes around the key of C. And then the Ionian is the tonic. And I can indicate that by just capitalizing the I, and that would be another way that you can do it. You can also do it by modal range. So from a natural number system, this would be a 1-5 chord from a modal range perspective. And this would be a 1-7 chord. We'll talk about this more in a second. And this would be like a 1-2 chord. This would be a 1-4 modal range chord, a 1-6 modal range chord. And I'll talk about where we got those numbers in a second, but you could also name it an Ionian by the modal points would be the endpoints of an Ionian Mixolydian chord. It would be an Ionian Locrian chord, an Ionian Dorian chord, Ionian Lydian chord. It could be an Ionian Aeolian chord. So these are all legitimate ways to name these same chords, which in a database program would be easy for us to toggle back and forth between, right? So I'm going to just make this top bit green or just blue for now. I'll make that blue and this, and then the next one would be doing something. I'm going to skip down to the next major chord, which is going to be the F in our collection of notes, or the Lydian. So the Lydian, if it was on the F, would be something like an F major. And then it would be, well, I'd have to do it this way. It would be the same like major system, and then major 7, and then we'd have a major 9, but then it gets messed up on the 11. You get a major sharp 11 because it has an augmented 4th, which is equivalent to the 11, and then you get a major 13, but then you have to say that it's a sharp 11. So these are the collection of notes under the normal naming convention that would be built off of the Lydian node. Now, so I'm going to then do our formula. So this equals F. I'm going to say this is going to be the F, and then and quotes major. And then this is going to be equal to the F in this collection of notes, quotes, major 7, end quotes. Oh, come on. Oh, I didn't put an and. Okay, my bad. My bad. I'm going to say this And your bad what? My bad mistake. You have to complete the sentence. You can't just say it's your bad. Your bad what? Are you just bad? I'm not bad. That was my bad. Okay. I'm gonna say this equals this and this. Okay. So then I'm gonna say that this. But I would like to call it something like an N number 3-note Lydian, which is the Y, or a number 4-note Lydian, or a number 5-note Lydian, or a number 6-note Lydian, or a number 7-note Lydian, or a number 8, not 8, there's only 7. And then we could also call it, if we wanted to, call it a Y2, a Lydian 2, a Y3 chord, a Y4. That means the 2 doesn't represent the number of notes in it. It represents the distance in modal whole steps from the tonic. And then it's going to be a Y4, and then it's going to be a Y5 modal whole steps and Y6 modal whole steps. And then we could also capitalize it. I could say, well, let's just do it this way. Don't get capital Y2, capital Y3, capital Y4, capital Y5, capital Y6, Y. And then we're going to say this is going to be a 4-1 chord. A 4-3, we'll get to this in a second, but this is the endpoints from a Nashville number system, which is the way we can name the chord. So I'd like to, if I had a DAW system, toggle between any of these naming conventions, so we can use whichever one we want, which with AI systems in a high-tech DAW world, we should easily be able to write it either way we want and be able to translate it any way we need. So this is, I can't see my worksheet. This is a Locrian NCYDC. Okay, so there's that. All right, and then I'm trying to get my cheat sheet worked out here. Let's make this one green and bordered. Oh wait, what happened there? I clicked off of the spot. All right. So the next one, let's do the next major mode would be a Mixolydian. So if we're on the Mixolydian, the first one would be a major, but then it gets messed up on the 7. So then it's just a number after that, 7, 9, 11, and 13 if you use like the Nashville numbering system. And so that would be our G, Mixolydian G, if I'm in the collection of notes around C major. So I'm going to say this equals the G and quotes and quotes. And then this is going to be equal to the G. And I don't think I need quotes now because the second one's a number. So I think that'll, oh, maybe I do. The G and then I don't need quotes. Yeah, there we go. Because it's a number, so it's just going to be G and boom. And then it's going to be equals G and that's because there's a flat 7 off of the Mixolydian note. And this is going to be a G and. So let me pull that over here because it should be, I'm going to say cut, paste, and then I could call that an N, should be a number X, number 3-note Mixolydian, which is an X. A number 4-note Mixolydian, which is an X. Let me just copy these maybe. This might be easier. And then paste values. But then I'm going to go in there and make this an X. 3-note X, 4-note X, 5-note X, 6-note X, X. And then here, this is going to be, let me just try that again. That might be the way to go. That's the way to go. Paste it this way, and then I just change these as to X. To X. You have to delete it first. And then to X. And then to X. And then to X. And then caps lock. And then this needs to go to X. And then this goes to X, capital X. And then this goes to capital X. And then this goes to, and then this goes to capital X. And then this goes to capital X, caps lock off. And then this is going to be a 5-2 chord, a 5-4 chord, and then a 5-6 chord, and then a 5-1 chord, and a 5-3 chord, which we could call then an XD chord, an XY chord, an XA chord, an XI chord, or an XP chord. We'll talk more about that in a second, or after, possibly next time when we look at the distances. But those are the ways we can write the same set of chords built off of the Mixolydian. Mixolydian. All right. So now we're going to say minor. Let's do the minor with the Aeolian, which is the minor. So that would have a minor, and then a minor 7, and then a minor 9, and then a minor 11. And then the Aeolian actually has a minor flat 13. So we need a weird extension on that one, but let's pull this one over here. It should be over here. I'm going to add the A in front of it. So equals this A, because that's 6, okay. And then quotes for the minor. And this is going to equal then this, I could just do this one here. That should work fine as well. A and then quotes for the minor. And then this is going to be equal to this A and quotes for the minor. And then this is going to be equal to this A and quotes for the minor. And uno vez más, one more time, por favor, what equals A and quotes for the minor. Okay, I didn't put the and. You said the and, but you didn't write the and. It's not good enough just to say it. It's not good enough just to say it. I'm going to paste the values only, and then replace the X with an A. So 3 note, that's not an A, 3 note A, note 4A, notes 5A, notes 6A, notes 7A, and then I'm going to copy these. This is the distance from that point, modal point plus the distance of 2 modal half steps, 3 modal whole steps, 2 modal whole steps. Dang it, I deleted the wrong thing. This should be A2, and this should be just A3, this should be A4, this should be A5, this should be A6, caps lock, capital A2, capital A3, capital A4, capital A5, capital A6, A6. And then the distance is going to be a 6-3 chord, a 6-5 chord. It's going to be, wait, I have a 6-7 chord, a 6-2 chord, a 6-4 chord. Let's make these capital C's. Capital C. And that's going to be an AP chord, an AX chord, AN chord, AD chord, AY chord. And then I'm going to make this green, bordered and green. All right. And then the Dorian node. So the Dorian has a minor, and then a minor 7, and then a minor 9, and then a minor 11, and then a minor 13. So everything fits in the Dorian, which is weird because you would think everything would fit on the Aeolian. But no! Here's the Dorian. That's going to be a D and quotes, and then we've got the D minor. This should be a D minor 7 equals the D and this should, wait a sec, the and's in the wrong place and you need a 7. Dude, you're losing it. Wait a sec. Okay, now I just totally messed up. Let me just delete it. I'm going to delete it, undo, back in there, 7, and then I need an equals D and quotes 7, minor 7. And this one's going to be equal to the D and quotes minor 9. And this one's going to be equal to the D and minor 11. I forgot the and. And then this is going to be equal to the D and minor 13. All right, then I'll copy this down. So copy, boom, boom. And then I'm going to say not an A, but this should be a small d for the Dorian. Notes 3 Dorian, notes 4 Dorian, notes 5 notes Dorian, 6 notes Dorian, notes 7 Dorian. And then I'm going to copy these two down. Copy, paste, values only. And we're going to say Dorian is a D, so I'm going to change this to a D for Dorian 2 modal whole steps. Start at the Dorian and then go 2 modal whole steps up. Distance-wise is another way we can say it, which I don't want to go into detail now. Caps lock, capitalize D, Dorian 2 modal whole step, but now the capitalized means that it's the tonic. So I'm in the collection of notes around C major, but the Dorian is the tonic, which happens to be the D note, but that's not what that D means because I'm writing it without the note's relative position. So it could also be a 2-6 chord, it could be a 2-1 chord, a 2-3 chord from a Nashville number system, which we'll talk more about in the next step after we do this. It could be also named a DA chord, a DI chord, a DP chord, a DX chord, a DN chord. Let's make this blue and bordered. Blue and bordered. All right, so the next one is the Phrygian, which is also a minor mode. So we have a similar construction, which would be it's minor, minor 7, minor, and then a flat 9, which I'm going to put a B there. Why? Because the 9's equivalent to the 2, and the Phrygian has a minor second, whereas everything else has a major second. That's going to mess everything else up from there. So then you have a minor 11, but you have to add then the flat 9, and then you get a minor flat 13, because you also have a minor 13, which is equivalent to a minor 6 in essence, and you have to tack on the minor 9. So I'm gonna cut and paste this over here, and then I'm gonna double click in there and say this is gonna be equal to the Phrygian, which is, that's this one. So I'm going to say it's the F, and quotes. So from the collection of notes around the C major, then the Phrygian would be the F. So that's going to be equal to the F and quotes minor 7, in quotes. And then this is going to be equal to the F and quotes minor flat 9, end quotes. And then this is going to be equal to the F and quotes minor 11 flat 9, end quotes. And this is going to be equal to the F and quotes, minor flat 13, flat 9, end quotes. Copy this down, paste it, values only, and I'm just going to change the D to a P for the Phrygian. D to the P, D to the P, D to the P. So this is a 6-note Phrygian, and so you just take every other modal half step until you get to 6 of them, and then we'll copy this down, boom, and here, and then I'm just going to change the D to the P. So start at the Phrygian, go 2 modal whole steps up from a distance perspective to get to the end point, so we can define the chord thusly, or we can caps lock, make it the tonic, meaning we're in the collection of notes around the key of C, but this would be indicating that the Phrygian node is the tonic. We're playing in essence, the Phrygian mode, same collection of notes around the key, or the, from the key of C. So then from a modal range standpoint, Nashville number 3 to 7, we'll talk more about how to get that later, but it's 3 to 7 C chord, and this is going to be a 3-2 chord, a 3-4 chord, a 3-6 chord, a 3-1 chord, which you can also write as a PN chord, a PD chord, PY chord, PA chord, PI chord. Let's make this green and bordered. Green and bordered. And then the next one, finally, we've got the crazy Locrian. So the Locrian has a diminished chord because it has a flat 5. And then I'm just gonna copy this. So I'm gonna kind of cheat and copy this from my practice session. So you can ask ChatGPT, if you don't have this, how to cheat, and say, Chat, just give me this flat, this half diminished symbol, and then Chat will give it to you, or whatever AI you want, so that you don't have to look it up, and then you can copy and paste it here. So then it's going to be a diminished 7, and then you've got a diminished 9, and then you've got a diminished 9, 11, and then you've got a diminished 13, and then you got a diminished 13. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you got a 7. Yeah, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. And so then you can call that. Then it's gonna be. Let's copy this down. Copy and paste. So now we're just building a chord off of the Locrian. From this naming convention, there's nothing unusual about it. We just say you're going to do the same thing and just build it off the Locrian. So it would be a 3-note N chord. Just take every other modal half step from the Locrian node, and so on and so forth. So then let's copy these down. Copy and paste these. Distance-wise, just take 2 modal whole steps from the Locrian node. Take 3 modal whole steps from the Locrian node to get to the end point. 4 modal whole steps from the Locrian mode to get to the end point, and so on and so forth. If the Locrian was the tonic, which it normally isn't, we'd make it a capital, right? We'd say we're playing in Locrian node. Locrian is the tonic of the song. Not a usual thing to do, but you could do it. You could do it if you're creative. And then we're going to say this is going to be a 7, 4, let's say C. There's going to be a 7, 6 C, a 7, 1 C, a 7, 3 C, a 7, 5 C. And then it's going to be an NYC, an NAC, an NIC, an NPC, and NXC. Let's make this blue and bordered. Bordered and blue. Okay. This blue. Okay, so then next time I'm going to list out the, do we have time? No, we'll do it next time. Let's select these and double click to tighten it up. So next time I'm going to list out the modal points. Now that if I define each of these chords not off of the C, but rather off of the relative modal point, then I can actually list out the modal points for all 12 collections of 7 notes, so that I can then rotate between playing in the collection of notes around the key of C to any of the other collection of notes, and it will then automatically populate and tell us not only like it's a C major versus a D major, but give us the actual nodal points in each of those collection of notes, so I can define more specifically, and that's what, in essence, this range is built off of. Meaning, if it's an Ionian node, it starts on the Ionian and it ends on the Mixolydian. If it's a 3-note Ionian chord, I don't care if we're in the key of C or any other key that we're playing in, and that ability to represent things by relative position, relative perspective, allows us to then rotate our songs from all of the normal kind of perspectives, all 12 collections of 7 notes, and can give us the perspective of rotating through the different modes. So that kind of pivoting and rotation would be highly useful, particularly for people using a DAW or MIDI system that don't know music theory, because then they can write it in one way and then use their ear to rotate through the standard color systems of music that still fit like within the chords, right? Okay, so we'll continue with that next time.